Hi, I'm LaCondra Bellin with Durham Cooperative Extension, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. Today is part one of our school choice series, and we're going to talk about the process and how to make it a little bit less overwhelming. With us today, we have Dr. Rita Rathbone with Durham Public Schools, and she is going to share some tips on how to make the process a little bit smoother and help you with making your choices. Hi, Rita.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here.
We're glad to have you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for Durham Public Schools?
So I've been in Durham Public Schools for 25 years now. I started as a classroom teacher, and then I moved into the world of magnet programs, and I now work to support magnet programs at the district level in Durham Public Schools.
Okay. You've been with us in this process as we talked about school choice. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is just making that choice. Can you give us some advice for parents on how to make the choice or
Absolutely.
the process of making the choice?
I have worked with parents involved in the school choice process for over a decade now. And so I know how overwhelming and frustrating it can be. So the most important thing to remember as a parent is that there is no one right answer. There are always multiple options that will be a really successful and really positive learning environment for your child. Also, don't ever let yourself feel like that you are the only one involved in this decision. Your child needs to be involved. At every developmental level, there's an appropriate space for that child to be engaged in that decision-making process. It's also really important to consult with lots of people who know your child well, especially in an educational setting. They can give you insight. Into how the child responds in educational environments that you may not really have as a parent. Even though you know your child really well, you don't always see them in educational settings. So don't let that burden be only on you. Build that whole circle of people who know your child well. The other piece of advice is always make sure you go and visit schools in person. Every school out there has tours. Even your neighborhood school, your neighborhood public school is happy to have you on a tour. And just like if you were for yourself looking at a job, would you want to go and spend 8 hours a day working in a job at a place that you've never been to the location? So definitely take the time and listen and learn, ask questions. And you can certainly listen to other people's opinions, but remember, everybody is different. Everyone's experience may be different. Every child is different. So definitely go and experience the school yourself. Try not to put too much emphasis on factors that are outside of that your own child's experience about things like prestige or perceived quality or a really positive experience or really negative experience from someone else. Try to go in with an open mind and evaluate the learning environment for yourself.
So, what kind of things are you looking for when you go and visit a school? And is there a specific time frame or are there limited times that you can go into a school?
Well, for Durham Public Schools, we offer tours throughout November, December, and January.
Okay.
And there are also usually tour events later in the spring as people are making that transition from one school to another as they change grades. I think a lot of other schools also have a similar yearly schedule, but you can always just check the individual school for the time frame. But for what you're looking for, again, trust your instincts. Think about how it feels to be in that space. The adults who are working in that space, how do they make you feel? How do they interact with children? And just imagine that precious child of yours. Try to imagine them as a young adult. And if you had to pick one and only one as your top priority for what you want that child as an adult to have developed, to be that priority. And then think about your values and how does that educational setting align with your values and your truest, deepest priorities for what you want your child to develop. Are those two things compatible? Is what you see as a learning environment going to successfully develop those skills or those dispositions, attitudes, behaviors that you want to shape your child in your vision of them as an adult?
I've heard you talk before about the science behind making a choice. Can you share that? It's one of my favorite things to hear you talk about.
I can, yes. There's a whole lot of psychology that comes to play when humans make choices. And we're actually not very good at it. And in fact, the research shows that parents are actually quite poor at school choice decisions because they tend to evaluate and weigh and put a lot of energy and emphasis on factors that don't actually correlate strongly to student outcomes. Part of it is just our own perceptions of how we experience school. Part of it is, a lack of kind of understanding of pedagogy and the process of learning and things like that. So that's part of why it's valuable to make sure you have multiple perspectives and you have a whole a circle of people to know your child collaborating and discussing on this so that you have those multiple perspectives. And so that's something to think about because a lot of the factors that they strike you really strongly as a parent, you respond really strongly to certain things that you see. Stop and think, okay, what impact does that aspect of this environment actually have on learning? Am I responding very negatively or very positive to something that actually isn't going to have a strong impact on the actual learning of my child and their development as a person? So kind of, again, taking that time to sort of step back, get multiple perspectives, and see if what you are considering and valuing, is there actually a relationship there between that thing that triggers strong emotions and how it will impact your child positively or negatively.
So, what are the questions to ask and reflect on when considering school choice options?
When you're in visiting a school and considering it as a space for your child, you want to ask about the staff. What is the staff's level of training, certifications, experience? Why is that their job? Why are they a teacher? What has them coming to work every day? What are their priorities, right? If you're talking about your values and priorities, ask other people about their values and priorities in an educational setting and see how closely they align to what you value. Ask about the actual schedule of the day and of the school year. How is the learning experience structured? There are, of course, some structures that we know are better for learning and some structures that work better for individual students. So something as small as how long learning time is or classes, if the student is older, longer or shorter, multiple, 7, 8 different classes in a day or 3, 4 different classes in a day. What are the extracurriculars or electives or specials, as they often call the elementary schools? What is that student going to experience throughout the week as well? And so those kind of things that seem as an adult insignificant actually has a really powerful impact on students and can really shape their learning experiences, positive or negative, or more or less successful for them. So definitely ask a lot of questions on how the learning is structured in time of the day, in time throughout the year, and in sequence of materials and sequence of information. There's also the basic practical concerns, transportation options, food options for lunch, etc. The school's location. Consider how practical it is for you and your family and what those trade-offs are. Is it really practical to get to a school that is a little further out or has less convenient transportation? Is that worth it to you and to your family when you consider? Is it something that you can make adjustments for, or is that adjustment really going to be a strain on the family? So think as well about what are the practical implications of this arrangement for this school and will they work for my family?
Once you've chosen your school, do you have to stay with that school? Let's say it doesn't work out or it's a different experience than you thought it would be. What are your options then?
So I think that can be one of the hardest aspects of school choice is kind of deciding when maybe it wasn't a right choice or a right fit or what you expected. I think it's important to keep the perspective that anything can be a learning environment, anything can be a learning experience. The context you give to that and the conversations you have and the expectations that you set can really shape how a student can learn and grow from a situation. So if you decide that maybe there's frustrations or there's things that are not ideal or not perfect, the question is any school ever going to be perfect, right? And what is your child learning by working through those frustrations? How are they benefiting from kind of that productive struggle from something that may not be perfect? It's also important to separate your own feelings as the adult
Yes.
of what may be a source of frustration or concern for you, things that lead to discomfort for you, and really consider, is that actually negatively impacting the child? A lot of what we do as parents can sometimes actually be more about our own comfort. The idea, yes, consistency is good for children, but they need it far less than we do. As parents, as the adults, we are actually the ones that are really striving for and trying to plan out that future, know what to expect, not to have surprises, and have that consistency. So when you find that something maybe doesn't feel like the right fit anymore, start by separating out adult emotions versus child impact, and then decide whether or not it's something that the student could actually benefit through working through and learning through and understanding how to manage situations, because no school is ever going to be perfect.
So thank you for sharing us and helping us think about that process. And if you have questions or you want to talk through the process, you can reach out to Dr. Rita Rathbone. I will share her information here. If there was one thing that you want them to take away as we close this out, and you had to put it in 2 sentences, what would you say as they're thinking about making this choice?
There is no one who is a professional educator who's there because they don't want children to succeed, but they don't want to create a positive learning environment for a child. So education in general is filled with dedicated, passionate people who work hard for children. So just keep in mind that the people at any school are going to be amazing people that care about your child and want the best for them.
Well, thank you for sharing with us today. And we're looking forward to our other segments with you.
Thank you for having me.